What if the night isn't empty? What if somebody is really out there watching us? I asked myself that when it happened. And I never thought I'd be the one telling this story. My name is Margaret Lane. I'm 42 years old. I teach history at a small college in Arizona. I don't believe in this kind of thing. I always told people everything has an explanation, but that night I couldn't explain anything. I was at home, alone, grading papers, and the power went out. No warning, just silence. And then I felt this pressure in the air, not like weather, not like anything I knew, so I walked outside. And that's when I saw it. There were lights over the desert, not moving like planes, not breaking apart like lightning. They were straight lines, cutting the sky, pulsing, like signals. And behind them I saw shapes, tall and thin, bending forward, like they were pulling something out of the dark itself. I stood there, frozen, holding those papers in my hand. And then it hit me. This pressure in my chest, like I was being pulled forward. I dropped everything. I tried to step back, but I couldn't move, and all the shapes turned towards me at the same time. I don't remember leaving the porch, but suddenly I wasn't there anymore. I was in a place that was white. No walls, no doors, just endless surfaces, and those figures circling me. Their heads tilting, their eyes black, and I couldn't move a muscle. I couldn't even breathe the way I wanted. And then nothing. Nothing I can explain. Just blank. The next thing I knew, I was back outside. The sand in my hair. A mark on my wrist shaped like a crescent. Hours missing, and everything was too quiet, like the night had been drained out of the world. I tried to keep living like nothing happened. Going to work, teaching, smiling at people. But every night when I closed my eyes, I felt it. That pull in my chest, like they were still inside me somehow, waiting, and the mark on my wrist never faded. I kept touching it, pressing it, like maybe I could erase it, but it wouldn't go away. The desert was wrong after that. Too quiet, too empty. I'd step outside and it felt like the whole sky was holding its breath, and then one night I saw it again. Just a flicker above the ridge, sharp light, straight lines. The same as before, and I swear to you I couldn't breathe. I grabbed the edge of the table. I thought my ribs were going to snap open from the pressure. My vision went black around the edges. I knew they were coming back. I knew they were already here. And in that moment I wanted to run. I wanted to scream. But my legs wouldn't move. My throat locked. And all I could think was not again. Please, not again. And then, I don't know how long I stood there gripping that table. My fingers went numb. My chest felt like it was being crushed from the inside. I couldn't call for help. I couldn't even hear my own breathing. It was like the air had been stolen from the room. The lights outside grew sharper, cutting through the window blinds, thin lines that moved like blades across the walls. And I felt the same pull tearing at me, dragging me toward the door. I tried to fight it. I tried to hold on. But my body wasn't mine anymore. The mark on my wrist started to burn, not heat on the skin, but something deeper, like it was glowing inside me, like they had left a hook and were reeling me back in. I clawed at it, pressing my nails into the skin until it bled, but it didn't matter. The pull kept getting stronger. I stumbled into the hallway, my legs moving without control, my vision spinning. The silence outside replaced by a low hum that rattled through the walls. I swear the whole house shook like it was about to come apart, and I knew if I stepped outside again I wasn't coming back. The last thing I remember is the light filling every corner, no shadow left anywhere, and my body rising from the floor even though my feet were still on the ground. My arms lifted against my will. I tried to grab the doorway, but my hands slid off the wood like it wasn't solid anymore. The whole room stretched wider than it should have, walls bending, the ceiling tilting. I thought I was blacking out, but my eyes were open. I heard something above the hum, not words, not language, just a rhythm, sharp pulses inside my skull. It felt like commands, like instructions my body was obeying without me agreeing. My mouth opened, but no sound came out, just a gasp that wasn't mine. The windows burst with light, white and cutting, so bright it had no source. It wasn't shining in, it was pouring out, like my house had been split open from the inside. I tried to scream, to fight, but every muscle locked. My chest tight, my heartbeat hammering in my throat. I thought it was going to stop altogether. I remember the floor dissolving under me, not falling, not flying, just the ground vanishing until there was nothing to hold on to. The hum drilling straight through my ribs, and then the world above me bending, pulling me upward, and I knew This wasn't the second time. It was the beginning of something that wasn't going to end. The next thing I knew, I was lying flat on a surface that wasn't a floor. It was cold but not metal. It was smooth like glass but soft enough that it moved slightly under me when I breathed. My eyes struggled to adjust, but there wasn't any darkness anywhere. No shadows, just a pale glow coming from every direction. Shapes moved at the edge of my vision. Not close, not touching me yet, just circling. I tried to lift my head, but my neck wouldn't move. My arms wouldn't move. The mark on my wrist pulsed like it was alive, and every time it did, my chest tightened as if something inside me responded. I couldn't see their faces clearly, only the outlines, tall and bent at angles that didn't look human. One leaned closer, and the space around me changed, stretched, like the air itself bent when it moved. I wanted to scream, but my voice stayed locked in my throat. Then I felt it. Not pain exactly, but intrusion, like they were looking through me, searching for something I didn't know I carried. Every thought in my head felt exposed, like they could hear all of it. I told myself, don't think, but that only made it worse. Time broke apart after that. Seconds, minutes, hours. I couldn't tell. All I know is when I blinked, I wasn't on that surface anymore. I was somewhere else entirely, somewhere that wasn't a room at all. I opened my eyes again and the room was gone, or at least what I thought was a room. I was standing, suspended, in a space that felt like a chamber but without visible walls. It reminded me of a spherical planetarium but inverted. Surfaces were curved inward, glowing faintly, and I recognized geometric consistency. Tessellations forming hexagonal grids across the interior. It wasn't random, it was engineered. As a historian, I specialize in ancient architecture, so my mind went there first. Cyclopean masonry, tessellated mosaics, the precision of Inca stonework. But this wasn't stone. It wasn't any material I knew. The surface looked metallic but absorbed light instead of reflecting it. My training told me to analyze, record impressions, note dimensions. I estimated the chamber to be maybe 20 meters in diameter, self-illuminating, with no discernible seams. Figures emerged again, but this time I could see more detail. Their bodies weren't uniform, thin, elongated torsos, limbs jointed at intervals that didn't match human anatomy. No visible mouths. The cranial shape was elongated, ridged. The black surface I thought were eyes, up close, were not spheres but lenses, compound structures, refracting like insect eyes yet smooth like obsidian. When one turned toward me, the chamber vibrated. Not sound, not air pressure, something infrasound, subsonic. I've lectured on archaeoacoustics before, the way ancient sites were designed to resonate at specific frequencies. This was similar but magnified. I felt the vibration in my sternum, in my teeth. My body was resonating with their presence. Then came the intrusion again, sharper this time. My wrist burned as though the crescent-shaped mark was a port, an interface. I felt data, or something like data, being pulled. Not memory in the human sense, more like they were parsing my sensory system directly, extracting patterns. I tried to anchor myself in method, observation, description, chronology. But the timeline broke apart. Every second stretched and collapsed at once, my thoughts scattered like loose paper in wind. At one point, the chamber shifted, became transparent. Beyond it was not the desert, not Earth at all, a void scattered with unfamiliar constellations, stars bent by distortion fields I couldn't map. I told myself to catalog them, memorize positions, but they warped the moment I tried to focus, and the figures were still moving closer. I forced myself to focus, to give them a name, because that's what humans do when faced with the unknown. It helps to stay sane. Night harvesters, that's what I called them in my head, because they looked like they were stripping darkness itself from around me, collecting it the way we collect samples in a lab. 2 of the night harvesters moved in, no hesitation now. The lenses in their heads shifted color, from black to a deep violet. The vibration rose in pitch. My mark burned hotter, and then suddenly, a grid of light formed above my chest. A perfect square lattice like a scanning array. My vision doubled. Data flickered in symbols I couldn't read, but my mind tried to translate anyway. Angles, ratios, prime numbers. They were scanning, sampling, moving fast. My body lifted completely off the surface, limbs spread, nothing holding me but invisible fields. I could feel my heartbeat accelerating against the pressure. As a historian, I'm trained to notice ritual patterns. This wasn't random. Their movements followed a sequence, a rotation around me, each pause exactly timed. Something slid into my ear, not physically, but as a sensation. Tones, layered pulses. My brain recognized patterns, Fibonacci spacing, resonant intervals like ancient temple acoustics but at ultrasonic range. They were teaching me their structure, or using mine. Then the chamber cracked open, not exploded, just split with a seam of white light, and I was hurled forward. For a blink, I was outside everything, stars rushing like liquid metal, no air, no sound, only acceleration. My stomach flipped, my eyes streamed, but I was still conscious, still pinned in that field. I saw a structure ahead, massive, like a ringworld or orbital lattice, segments turning with mechanical precision. It was built from the same light-absorbing material, but kilometers across. The night harvesters pulled me toward it at impossible speed, and then we crossed the threshold. The grid around me collapsed. I was standing on a platform looking down at a city, if you could call it that, made of vertical spires twisting in fractal shapes, all connected by thin bridges of light. My legs almost gave out. The night harvesters stepped aside, forming a corridor. Something larger was coming. The corridor of light widened and the night harvesters stopped moving. Their lenses all shifted to the same deep violet. The hum inside my skull became a single tone so strong I thought it would split my head open. From the far end of the platform, a shape emerged. Not tall and thin like the others, but massive. A bulk of shifting geometry, edges folding into edges, no fixed outline. Every time I blinked it looked different. A column, a winged shape, a cluster of spheres. The air bent around it. My knees buckled. The mark on my wrist turned into a band of light, running up my arm, across my chest. I couldn't breathe. Data poured through me, not into my mind, but into my bones. I knew it was looking at everything I'd ever seen, every thought, every cell. My name, my past, my species. It raised something, not an arm, not a limb, just a protrusion, and a pulse hit me. For a second, I was nowhere. Total black, no sound, no body. When vision came back, I was on my knees in a place that was not the platform. The spires and bridges were gone. I was outside in the desert again, but not my porch. Miles from home, the sky was just beginning to turn gray, like it was almost morning. My car was gone. My papers gone. My phone cracked in my pocket. No signal. My whole body shook. The mark on my wrist was still glowing faintly. The silence was back. Not normal silence, but the hollow quiet of something that had just ended and might start again. I stood up and realized I was at the edge of a dry lakebed, one I'd only ever seen on a map. No tracks, no roads. No sign of how I'd been dropped here. I told myself to walk, just walk, keep moving. But my legs felt like they belonged to someone else. The images of the spires, the pulse, the massive shape, all of it flickered in my head like broken film. I forced my legs to move, one step at a time, the sand crunching too loud under my shoes, the desert pressing down on me like a weight. Every few steps I turned because I swore I could hear movement. But there was nothing, just empty ground stretching forever. The mark on my wrist had gone completely dull. No glow, no pulse. Just a faint scar now, cold to the touch. For a second I thought maybe it was over, that whatever had happened was done, but the silence around me was wrong. It wasn't the natural stillness of dawn. It felt staged, as if the whole landscape was holding its breath. In the distance I spotted a structure, rusted fencing, collapsed beams. An abandoned weather station I'd only seen in archive photos. Government installation shut down decades ago. Somehow I had been left here. That couldn't be random. Inside the ruin, the equipment was shattered, wires hanging loose, but the antenna mast still stood, bent but intact. As soon as I stepped closer, the air changed. Temperature dropped fast, like walking into a freezer. The horizon flickered just for an instant. The stars above me rearranged and snapped back into place. The station bent out of view, and the next moment, I was on a recliner by the town's public pool. Chlorine in the air, the smell was strong. I heard water filters running, splashes, and kids shouting somewhere close. It didn't make sense. The last thing I remembered was the desert. Now the sun was overhead and people walked past me like nothing was wrong. A lifeguard moved by, didn't even glance at me. I looked at my wrist. No mark, no scar, nothing. I tried to stand up. My legs worked, but shaky. The concrete was hot. For a second, the surface of the pool changed. It looked flat, metallic, not water, then blinked back to normal. I froze. I opened my mouth to ask someone what time it was, but no sound came out. My throat locked. A whistle cut through the air. I forced myself to leave the pool. Nobody stopped me. Nobody even looked twice. I walked to the parking lot and my car was there, door unlocked. Keys in the ignition like I had left them. The drive back felt wrong. The roads were empty. No other cars. No people. I passed the gas station, closed in the middle of the day, no one inside. No sound except the engine. When I reached my street, everything looked the same. Houses, lawns, mailboxes. My own place standing exactly as I'd left it. But the curtains in my living room window were open and I never leave them open. I parked, sat for a long minute staring at that window, then went inside. The house smelled of dust, stale air. My papers were still scattered across the kitchen table, exactly as they'd been before the blackout. No sign of time passing. I picked one up. It was the same page I remembered holding before everything started. Upstairs in the bedroom, I found something that stopped me cold. On the nightstand was a glass of water, half full. I hadn't poured it. I touched the glass. It was warm. I left the glass where it was and forced myself to keep moving through the house. Nothing else seemed out of place. Closet doors shut. Bed untouched. Mail stacked by the front door. The next morning I went to work. I lectured, graded papers, answered questions. My students didn't notice anything wrong. Nobody asked why I looked tired. Nobody knew I had been gone. Days passed like that. Groceries, classes, small talk with colleagues. I walked past the pool. I drove past the gas station. Everything ordinary. Too ordinary. I told myself to focus on routine. Wake up, shower, drive, teach. I forced my life back into a schedule. No missing time, no lights, no sounds in the night. Weeks went by. The mark on my wrist never returned. And for a while, I believed maybe it was finished. ChatGPT Skazal. It started small. A student raising their hand in class, asking a question, and for a second their voice came out delayed, like the sound reached me half a beat late. I thought it was in my head. One night I woke up exactly at 3:17 a.m. No alarm, no noise, just wide awake. It happened again the next night, and the next. Always the same time. At the grocery store, I reached for a carton of milk and froze. The expiration date wasn't printed in numbers but in symbols I couldn't read. I blinked and it was normal again. The silence returned too. Not every night, but often. The kind of silence that feels heavy, like the whole world is waiting. I'd stand at my window, curtains shut, afraid to open them, afraid the horizon would split again. I sat in my office after class, papers piled on the desk, but I wasn't reading them. My mind kept circling back. Who were they? What were they harvesting? Why take me at all? I kept calling them night harvesters because it gave me something to hold on to, but harvest of what? Energy, memory, the silence itself. Nothing I knew from history matched it. No record, no folklore that precise. Part of me wanted to dismiss it as hallucination, sleep paralysis, oxygen loss, a seizure. I listed the possibilities like I would for my students. Rational causes. But none of that explained being dropped at the pool, or the drive home, or the warm glass of water on my nightstand. I wrote notes, tried to organize it like research. Symptoms, missing time, auditory distortions, environmental changes, artifacts, scar, location shift, documents unchanged. Every line I added made less sense. I kept asking myself if the night harvesters even saw me as a person. Maybe I was just material, one more specimen. And if that was true, why let me remember any of it at all? The silence in the desert, the grid of light, the resonance in my chest. Was that extraction? Or was it implantation? I couldn't decide which possibility was worse. I never went to a doctor. Every time I thought about making an appointment, the same thought stopped me. What would I even say? A scar that vanished, hours missing, a swimming pool that shouldn't have been there. Any physician would write stress, dissociation, trauma, maybe even medication. Instead, I built my routine back up. Work, home, groceries, grading. I wore long sleeves so I wouldn't have to look at my wrist. I slept with the light on for a while, then forced myself to switch it off. The classes filled, students came and went. No one noticed anything different. My colleagues stopped asking why I looked tired. My house felt normal again. No smells, no rearranged curtains. I kept a notebook hidden in a drawer where I wrote everything that had happened. Times, dates, places, sensations. It helped me stay anchored. Most nights I didn't add anything new. Weeks turned into months. The pool stayed the same. The desert stayed quiet. The mark never came back. I told myself it was over, or at least over enough to let me keep living. I never called it recovery. I just called it normal. I stopped writing in the notebook. One evening I closed it, slid it into the bottom of a drawer, and didn't touch it again. The scar on my wrist was just skin now. I stopped checking the horizon at night. I drove to work, taught my classes, did laundry, called my brother, paid bills. Nothing unusual happened. Days blurred into weeks. When people asked why I didn't travel or why I avoided driving after dark, I just said I preferred it that way. No one questioned it. The silence around the house felt ordinary again. The stars stayed fixed where they belonged. I didn't go to a doctor. I didn't tell anyone. I learned to keep it inside and keep moving. And that's how my life went back to looking exactly like it did before, even though I knew it wasn't.